A popular YouTube personality is gunned down while driving through Chicago's Printers Row neighborhood. He's identified as Zack Stoner, known on YouTube as ZackTv1. A witness, several stories up, posted this Twitter video moments after the crash. It appears to show a group of people at the scene getting into another vehicle, then driving off before police.
It just went bad that night, the wrong place, some bad decisions. And I don't even know if they was on him. The people that did it was bad decisions for them. You know what I'm saying? Zack was a good person, man. He was loved in Chicago.
ZackTv wasn't just a YouTuber. He was the hood's voice, stepping into the most dangerous streets of Chicago to give the streets a platform. But was that what got him off?
So you're basically saying this is deeper than what we know and we should all fall back.
Step back.
Step back. Don't talk about it no more.
Don't do it.
Some say he got too close to gang politics, making enemies with the wrong people. Others claim it was his work on the Kenneka Jenkins case, the mysterious death of a young girl found in a hotel freezer that shook the city to its core.
A lot of people told me fall back from this case, finish with rappers and but now you're saying people watching me.
Zack called himself the hood CNN, but was exposing the streets' downfall. And why, 5 years later, are there still no answers about who ended his life? Was this about silencing a man who dared to speak the truth? Or was Zack just another victim of Chicago's ruthless streets? First, let's talk about who Zack was and why he mattered so much. Zack Stoner wasn't just some dude with a camera trying to rack up YouTube views. Nah, Zack was different. He was real. Born and bred in Chicago, Zack knew the streets weren't just rough, they were ruthless. But instead of letting the hood eat him alive, Zack decided to flip the game. He turned his lens on the world he knew, the world everybody else was too scared to touch.
Whoa, man, who the f is this right here, man?
ZackTv1 wasn't a regular YouTube channel. This wasn't some flashy commercialized setup. Zack was out there in the trenches with nothing but a camera and a mission to let the streets speak for themselves. You know how hard that is? To walk into places where just breathing the wrong way could get you murked? Zack didn't just visit the hood, he lived it, and he gave it a voice.
Were you two guys at the party when Kenneka Jenkins was pronounced dead in the freezer?
Oh, yeah.
This man wasn't about any fake Hollywood narrative. He wasn't trying to sugarcoat the struggle. Zack gave you the real Chicago, raw, unfiltered, and sometimes downright grimy. He sat down with local rappers trying to make it out, gang leaders breaking down the rules of the streets, and even activists fighting to keep their blocks from becoming war zones. Zack wasn't just documenting a culture, he was building one. Zack was also ahead of his time. Way before the mainstream was checking for Chicago drill music, Zack had the camera rolling. He caught legends before they even became legends. Chief Keef, Lil Durk, FBG Duck. Zack didn't just put them on. He gave them a stage to tell their stories their way. No middlemen, no corporate filters.
You was either doing certain things growing up in Chicago, You was either playing sports, you was either banging, you was dancing. You know what I'm saying? Them was the main three things that you did when they came down to Chicago.
But Zack didn't stop at music. Nah, this man was diving into gang politics, street beefs, and all the drama that came with it. He gave you the backstory behind the beefs that had the city buzzing. Zack wasn't afraid to ask the tough questions. He went into places where police wouldn't go and spoke to people the media would never touch. That's why they called him the hood CNN. He wasn't just reporting, he was representing. You know what made Zack different? He didn't pick sides. While everyone else was out here clout chasing, Zack stayed neutral. He gave everybody a shot to speak their truth. Whether you were from O Block or 63rd, GDK or BDK, Zack treated everybody with the same respect, and that's rare in a city where alliances mean everything. But let's be real, staying neutral in a city like Chicago, that's a dangerous game. And that's where things get murky. Let's fast forward to May 30th, 2018. Zack had just left the Refuge nightclub, where the vibes were high, but tensions were simmering. He was mixing with the crowd, smiling, hyping people up. Among the concertgoers were gang members, an unavoidable part of the scene. Zack wasn't naive though. He always knew the danger. That night, danger didn't just linger, it followed. As Zack's Jeep rolled through downtown Chicago, a car pulled up. No words, no warnings, just gunfire. At least one gunman let off a flurry of shots, and Zack never had a chance. His 40 caliber Glock, legally registered, sat fully loaded at his feet. The man who always stayed ready didn't even get to lift his piece. He took 2 bullets that night, one in the shoulder and another in the back of his head. The fatal shot lodged in his brain. Paramedics found him slumped over the console, barely clinging to life. By 4:20 a.m., the hood lost its CNN.
A popular YouTube personality is gunned down while driving through Chicago's Printers Row neighborhood. He's identified as Zack Stoner, known on YouTube as ZackTv1.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to reports, the shooters didn't just flee. Witnesses saw them ditch their car, hop into another vehicle, and disappear.
Witness, several stories up, posted this Twitter video moments after the crash. It appears to show a group of people at the scene getting into another vehicle, then driving off before police arrived.
This wasn't some random act. It was calculated. But why? Some people believe Zack's death was tied to the gang interviews he was doing. See, Zack wasn't afraid to ask tough questions. He'd go straight to the source, talking to gang members about street politics, beefs, and retaliation. In one interview, FBG Duck talked about Zack's tragic demise, saying,
I felt like it was crazy, and whoever did this was some you feel me? Because Zack ain't did to nobody. So whoever did that to Zack.
That comment alone shows how raw and dangerous Zack's work was. Even Sean Cotton, the creator of Say Cheese TV, said Zack's loyalty to Chicago might have been his downfall. Cotton warned Zack to leave the city, but Zack refused. He believed in his mission too much.
I said, bro, move to New York. But his love, he was so loyal to Chicago, he would never move. Never, ever move to New York.
Then there's the Kenneka Jenkins angle. If you've been living under a rock, let me put you on game. Kenneka Jenkins was a 19-year-old girl from Chicago whose tragic death in September 2017 became a wildfire of controversy. She went to a party at the Crown Plaza, Chicago O'Hare Hotel in Rosemont. Everything seemed normal until it wasn't. She went missing for hours, and by the time they found her, it was too late. Kenneka's body was discovered inside a walk-in freezer in the hotel's kitchen, and that's when the questions started piling up. Was it a freak accident? Did someone lock her in there? Or here's the one that kept people up at night. Was there a bigger, darker conspiracy at play? The streets were buzzing, the internet went crazy, man. Everyone wanted answers. But you know how it goes. When a case like this involves whispers of foul play, cover-ups, and higher-ups pulling strings, a lot of people suddenly stop asking questions. Not ZackTv though. Zack was built for this. He wasn't just another journalist sitting behind a desk Googling theories. Zack hit the pavement. He pulled up to the hotel, talked to the people who were there that night, and made it his mission to dig up the truth. That's what set him apart. But that also might have been what got him off. From the moment Kenneka's body was found, something about the whole situation felt off. The hotel surveillance footage showed Kenneka wandering through the halls, clearly disoriented. She stumbled through the lobby, into a kitchen area, and then out of sight. The official story was that she accidentally walked into the freezer, got trapped, and froze to death. End of story, right? Wrong. People immediately started poking holes in that explanation. How does a fully functioning freezer in a busy hotel not have an alarm system? How does no one notice a girl stumbling around for hours? And let's not even talk about the footage itself. Clips that looked edited, timelines that didn't match up, and angles conveniently cutting off key moments. To a lot of folks, this wasn't just a tragedy, it was a cover-up. And this is where Zack came in. While mainstream media gave the story a quick headline and moved on, Zack stayed on it like a dog with a bone. He wanted answers, not just for his viewers, but for Kenneka's family, her friends, and everyone who saw themselves in her story.
Hi, Kenneka did not die in room 926. Let me get this out of here. Let me say this. Kenneka did not die in room 926.
But when you start digging too deep, you might not like what you find. And Zack found that out the hard way. Zack wasn't just out there talking to randoms. He was getting calls, real calls, from people claiming they had the inside scoop. Some of them were friends of Kenneka, people who were at the party that night. Others, well, let's just say they sounded like they were from higher places. Folks who didn't want their names out there. One call in particular stands out. Zack picked up, and the voice on the other end wasn't playing games. It was a woman, and her message was simple. Leave it alone before you end up like her.
You're basically saying this is deeper than what we know, and we should all fall back.
Step back.
Step back. Don't talk about it no more.
Don't do it.
Think about that for a second. Somebody was so pressed about Zack asking questions that they felt the need to warn him off. That's not just a casual threat, that's a red flag. And knowing Zack, he didn't back down. If anything, it probably made him want to dig even deeper. But this wasn't just about a warning. There were rumors, whispers about who might have been at that hotel, what kind of activities were going down behind closed doors, and why certain people didn't want the truth coming out. Some said it had to do with organ trafficking. Others believed it was tied to powerful people in the city, people who could make problems disappear with a phone call. And then there were the videos. Zack analyzed the surveillance footage himself, pointing out inconsistencies that no one else seemed to notice. He shared his findings on his platform, and suddenly his name was ringing bells in circles he probably never wanted to be in. Here's the thing about Zack, he wasn't afraid to ask the tough questions. But he also wasn't naive. He knew the risks of what he was doing. Covering gang beefs was dangerous enough, but poking around a case that seemed like a cover-up, that's a whole different level of heat. Even now, years later, the Kenneka Jenkins case is still one of the most talked about tragedies in Chicago. Theories about what happened that night have only grown, and Zack's role in exposing the inconsistencies is a big part of why the story hasn't been forgotten. Back in the family of Kenneka Jenkins reached a settlement reportedly worth $6 million.
The family of a young woman who was found dead inside a hotel freezer 6 years ago will receive a $6 million wrongful death settlement.
Jenkins' mother, Teriasa Martin, would receive a large share of the money, with 2 other relatives each receiving more than $1 million, according to the Chicago Sun-Times. The now settled lawsuit was filed in late 2018 by Jenkins' mother against the hotel, its security provider, and others, seeking $50 million. She accused staff of negligence and failing to do enough to find her daughter before she died. Martin says she grew worried and then desperate after the family lost contact with her daughter in the early hours of Saturday, September 9, 2017. Martin was unable to get in touch with Jenkins after around 1 a.m. when she arrived at room 926 for the party. By around 2:30 a.m., Jenkins' family said they and her friends were telling hotel staff that Jenkins was missing. By this time, Jenkins had wandered out into the hotel and left her cell phone upstairs, Martin's attorney said in a statement. Hotel surveillance videos reveal that she had walked downstairs in an obviously disoriented state and was seen by multiple staff members as she was walking toward the freezer, though no one stopped her. Martin said hotel and security staff didn't review video footage from in-house cameras quickly enough to help find her daughter, who wound up in an unused freezer in what her legal team described as an under-construction kitchen. She also said staff failed to intervene in the party on the 9th floor, which had sparked numerous complaints from hotel visitors. "My life will never be the same," Martin said when she filed the lawsuit in 2018. Adding that if the hotel had done things differently, her daughter might still be alive. At any rate, ZackTv wasn't just some regular dude with a camera. He was a real one who wasn't afraid to step into places most wouldn't dare. He called himself the Hood CNN, and he lived up to it. Zack pulled up to the trenches, talking to gang members, rappers, and regular folks, giving them a platform to tell their stories. He brought light to the darkest corners of Chicago, but doing that didn't come without risks. When you're in the streets like that, asking questions, shining a light on the beefs, and exposing truths, there's always a price to pay. Zack knew that. His work wasn't for the faint of heart. He didn't just report, he lived it. The man was walking a fine line every day, balancing between being a voice for the voiceless and painting a target on his back. Even his people saw the dangers he faced. Chicago's King Dave, another respected figure in the city, called Zack's death a tragedy that never should have happened.
I still live with to this day. I always be like, but I know there was nothing I could do. I wasn't there. I didn't know that was going on.
But let's be real, it wasn't just about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. When you're documenting gang culture and digging into controversial stories, some folks see you as a threat. And in a city like Chicago, threats don't get ignored. Dave's words hit hard because they carry a lot of what ifs. Zack wasn't out there looking for trouble. He was at an event supporting local talent, doing what he always did, giving back to the city he loved. But as soon as he stepped out into the night, everything changed. What made Zack different was also what made him vulnerable. He didn't play favorites. He didn't take sides. Zack wanted to show the raw, unfiltered truth of what was happening in the streets. And while that earned him respect, it also made him a target. Some people didn't like seeing their business broadcasted, even if Zack was just showing the reality they lived in. Chicago's a city where beef doesn't just stay online or in the studio. It spills out into the streets, and bullets don't discriminate. Zack knew that better than anyone, but he still pushed forward. But here's where things get murky. The Chicago Police Department claims they've got leads, evidence, and even suspects. They arrested 5 dudes linked to the Perry Avenue gang, the same faction allegedly beefing with Zack's childhood block, Goontown. But instead of justice, fans got excuses. Cook County prosecutors tossed the case, citing mutual combat. Yeah, you heard that right. They treated Zack's assassination like it was some old school Wild West duel. Witnesses? Inconsistent? Evidence? Not enough, they said. The message? If you're in the mix, your life's expendable. It's no wonder the streets stay silent. Eyewitnesses fear for their lives. Cameras line the block, but video footage hasn't led to convictions. Some people whisper that Zack's death wasn't random. Maybe he got too deep into gang politics. Maybe his coverage of Kaneka Jenkins stirred up the wrong kind of heat. Let's get one thing straight. Zack wasn't just another YouTuber chasing clout. He built bridges where there were none. He gave Chicago's underground rappers a shot at exposure. And for some, that spotlight changed everything. Take Thomas T. Streets Davis. Zack gave him his first big break.
Man, T Street, SB, man, State Boy, risk taker, 114, man.
A week after Zack's funeral, T Streets got gunned down too. He had ZackTv tattooed on his back, and some say his MDO was tied to the same beef that ended Zack. Zack's impact ran deeper than rap. He didn't belong to any gang, but growing up in Goontown, he was guilty by association in the eyes of rivals. To them, Zack wasn't just a neutral journalist, he was a threat. His footage, his interviews, his words, they carried weight. And in a city where respect is currency, Zack's growing influence could have tipped the scales in ways we'll never fully understand. In his last moments at Refuge nightclub, Zack didn't look like a man fearing for his life. He was rocking his White Sox cap, chopping it up with people who saw him as a hero. But something changed. Witnesses say he looked nervous as tensions flared during a heated rap battle. He told his crew it was time to go, and they rode out. 2 friends were in Zack's Jeep when the shots rang out. One even fired back, busting through the windshield in a desperate attempt to save their lives. But in Chicago, revenge is a cycle. The streets stay locked in an endless tit for tat, fueled by hypersensitivity and a twisted sense of honor. Zack knew this game better than anyone. In his videos, he'd flash his Glock, admitting he carried it everywhere because, in his words, you just gotta be prepared. But no amount of preparation could have saved him from the ambush that night. Zack's death isn't just unsolved, it's a scar on Chicago's soul. A city where 80% of homicides go unsolved, where gang ties can get you off just for where you grew up. Police claim they had the unalivers, but 2 of the suspects are now dead and the others walk free. What's clear is this: Zack died for the truth. He gave a platform to the people society forgot, knowing full well the cost. Today, his name lives on in the streets, in the lyrics of Chicago rappers, and on a makeshift cross that stands as a haunting reminder of his legacy. ZackTv wasn't just a YouTube channel, it was a movement. And even though the hood lost its CNN, the stories Zack told, and the ones he couldn't, will echo forever.